It's a Friday afternoon in August, the kind of late summer day where the air is thick and everything feels a little slow. A quiet street in Green Township, Ohio, Palmhill Lane. A neighborhood where people know their neighbors, where elderly couples sit on couches and watch the evening news. Thomas and Barbara Mortimer had lived there for years. They were 75 years old, retired. They had a son. And that afternoon, their son came to the door. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't a threat they could have anticipated from the outside. He was theirs, he was family. By 4 p.m., one of them would be dead. And the thing that keeps pulling me back to this case, the thing I cannot get out of my head, is that in the moments before everything shattered, Barbara Mortimer did exactly what a loving, worried mother would do. She tried to get her son help. That's where the story begins. Green Township isn't the kind of place associated with brutal family killings. It's suburban, quiet. Thomas and Barbara Mortimer were ordinary people. The kind who spend evenings watching the news together. The kind you imagine living out retirement peacefully. That house on Palmhill Lane wasn't just a building. It was where they built their lives. And their son, Kenneth, was part of that story. He was 40 years old. And by all accounts, he was drowning. He had prior legal troubles. Just months before, he violated his probation. The court records listed a very specific reason. Failure to do special condition corrective thinking. That phrase matters. Tells us that Kenneth had been flagged. The system knew he needed mental health intervention. There were warning signs. Sometimes, these true crime cases get reduced to a simple headline, "Monster kills parent." But real life is messier than that. This is a story about a man who had been unraveling for a long time, and a system that let him slip through the cracks until the only safety net left was his aging parents. Then came August 9th. Kenneth came to his parents' house. He asked if he could stay the night. Barbara said no.
No.
And something changed. What happened next is horrifying. An argument started. We don't know every word that was exchanged. But Barbara saw something in her son that day, erratic, terrifying behavior. And this is the part that honestly breaks my heart. She didn't respond with rage. She didn't scream at him to get out. She turned to her husband, Thomas, and told him to call psychiatric services. Even in that escalating moment, she was being a mother. She was reaching for a rope to save him. But Kenneth didn't see it that way. According to prosecutors, the moment she asked for psychiatric help, something in Kenneth snapped. He walked into the kitchen. He looked for the biggest knife he could find. He came back. His parents were still sitting on the couch. And he attacked them. Thomas, 75 years old, was stabbed multiple times where he sat. Barbara somehow managed to get up. She ran. She made it out the front door. Can you imagine that? A 74-year-old woman running for her life through her own front yard on a Friday afternoon, trying to escape her own son. She almost made it. That word almost hurts, because Kenneth caught her. He took her to the ground. And then, in an act of absolute cruelty, he dragged her back inside the house. Back into the home she had just tried to escape. He stabbed her again. Barbara Mortimer died right there. Thomas was critically wounded, but he survived. Kenneth fled, leaving behind a shattered family. But then comes one of those moments that you just never forget. When police arrived, they found Thomas Mortimer sitting on the front porch. He was covered in blood, barely alive. An officer approached him and asked, "Who did this?" And Thomas Mortimer looked at that officer and said, "My son. I don't know how you even process that. What it costs a man to name his own child as his wife's killer. That is pain beyond language." Kenneth was found a short time later, sitting in his car, soaked in blood. He confessed almost immediately. No mystery. He admitted it all. 10 days later, he was indicted. Aggravated murder, attempted murder, and kidnapping, a charge added specifically because he dragged his mother back inside. That single detail elevated the severity of everything. His bond was set at $2 million. Eventually, a judge ruled he was competent to stand trial. Legally, he understood what he had done. Exactly 1 year later, Kenneth Mortimer changed his plea. He pleaded guilty. The sentence? 45 years in prison. At 41 years old, that is essentially a life sentence. Maybe legally that is justice, but emotionally, there is no justice that restores what Thomas Mortimer lost. His wife, his home, his sense of safety, that cannot be sentenced back into existence. And honestly, what still bothers me most about this case is Barbara. In trauma research, there is a term called a betrayal wound. The deepest, most devastating injuries are the ones inflicted by the people who were supposed to be safe. Barbara's last instinct was compassion. She wasn't calling the police to punish him. She was asking for doctors to help him. She was trying to rescue her son, and that exact reach for help became the trigger for her murder. The person she was trying to protect became the person she needed protection from. Some cases stay with you. This is one of them, because we need to talk about the fact that Barbara and Thomas Mortimer weren't trained crisis workers. They were aging parents. They were forced to be the safety net for a man who the system had already identified as needing help. And it cost Barbara her life. Whatever broke inside Kenneth that afternoon, whatever warning signs were missed, none of it changes what he did. A woman is dead. A father lives with a wound that will never close. Barbara Mortimer deserves to be remembered not just as a victim in a true crime story, but as a mother whose final instinct was love, even when it stood closest to the damage. I want to know what you think down in the comments. Could this have been prevented systemically? Does 45 years feel like justice to you? This case is complicated, and pretending it's simple would be dishonest. Let me know your thoughts. If the story moved you, please leave a like. It helps stories like Barbara's get heard. Subscribe if you want more deeply researched true crime cases told with the humanity they deserve. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful. And remember, behind every case file, there are real people.